howdy, folks. This is Idiots versus Idiots. I am joined by my co-host, Big Man. On this program, we often make good choices, and sometimes we make bad choices. And one of the good choices that we made was having a guest on, and her name is Toddy McDougall.
Terry McDougall.
She is we had a hoot and a half. We talked a little bit about her book, her coaching business. All of her links will be in the description as always. We, of course, appreciate Terry for giving us her time. After all in this life, that's all we got.
Not to mention, I think she regretted it at the end. So, it.
I think every one of our guests is like, they're all going to pat us on the back to our face and then go, what have I done?
Yeah,
How far I've fallen.
I'll tell you what, you should enjoy it. And if you don't, I really don't care. So watch it anyway. And we'll see you on the other side.
For the first time in a long time, I agree with Big Man. If you don't care, I'm just going to tell you what I tell everyone. Screw you and up yours.
See you later, folks.
Well, folks, with us today, like I said, is our guest, Terry McDougall. Terry, you're kind of a marketing queen. Is that fair? Or how would you describe
queen?
yours?
I like
that's what's on my business card is Terry McDougall, marketing queen.
Oh, well, see, now I feel like I should stand up and bow or curtsy. Which is it a bow? Is it a curtsy? My wife and I have been watching The Crown. Is it a head nod? Like, I don't know. What is it?
I hope you guys studied up on your etiquette.
You sure did.
Oh, yeah, no. Etiquette is out the window if you've got Danny in the conversation. So that is not. So before we get into all of our insanity, what is Idiots versus Idiots? So welcome to be, we're not calling you an idiot today, but you're here with idiots. How about that?
But generally speaking,
I feel good to be among idiots. Sounds good.
But before we get into our insanity, there are some things that I wanted to. So how we normally do things around here is I'm the nice one, right? And I ask intelligent questions about you. Danny will go into his needy self later, right? So, but we want you to talk about you at least a little bit. I'm also the one that does the research. So, for example, by the way, your book. Which is, hold on, I want to get this right. Winning the Game of Work, by the way, right? Yep. I'm going to order this book and read it because here's the thing. I read the prefaces and some reviews and stuff like that, and you talk about something that is actually very personal to me. You talk about that when, I don't know how old you are, and I'm never going to ask that question, but at least me, I'm an old person. I'm a Generation Xer. Generation Xers were lied to when we were brought up. We were lied to about, being a well-rounded employee and all this kind of stuff. In the work world, go to work, show up early, do your work to the best of your knowledge. You'll get promotions and you'll get pay raises and you'll get, this stuff. And the world, while we were young adults, changed. It really did. Mm-hmm. It changed. And we weren't able to change with it in a lot of cases. And it's a problem for a lot of Generation Xers. And that's kind of what I got out of the preface and a lot of reviews of your books was there's a different strategy than Generation X, right? The lower end of the baby boomers and even what we call Zennials, right? That Generation X and Millennials that they didn't get. Am I right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that a lot of people, not so much my generation, but I think like ones that came after me were like, everybody gets a trophy, right? Like just show up and have fun and you're gonna get rewarded, right? And for a lot of people that, they learned this whole idea at school that like if you do your homework and you keep your nose clean and you're quiet and you raise your hand, that you're gonna get rewarded. And quite frankly, that is not the way that the workplace works. And for a lot of us, we were sitting there sort of scratching our heads when the guy down the hall who never shows up to meetings and doesn't return emails or phone calls gets promoted. And you're like, what the heck's going on here? And, I used to think that it was like favoritism or whatever. And as I advanced in my career and I, got mentored by some people who knew better, what I realized was that person that got promoted was probably focusing on the highest value work that he could and was not focused on the little piddly things that the rest of us felt like we had to do in order, we have to check off everything off our to-do list in order to do a good job.
That, oh, by the way, you were told that was the job description, right? Like you were, see, and this is again, I'm a big advocate of, and I'm an advocate of anybody that that teaches this form of information, right? I've traveled around the country, just like you wrote a book several years ago, very real estate related. So I've been a teacher, I was a college professor before, you know what I mean? That teacher's in you or it's not. And I'm a big of the difference between what you're talking about is that person that is a great employee, by the way, right? Shows up early, does everything that they're asked to do, right? Shows up to all the meetings, that kind of stuff. The difference between that and the person that goes along that faster career path track is just knowledge. There's something that my parents were poor people. They taught me to be poor. My teachers taught me to be poor and taught me to be an employee. And it wasn't until I gained more knowledge that I started to excel over. And I was always good at what I did, right? I was always the best at whatever job title I had. Hey, back down. All right, mister, I haven't worked a day in my life. And then, so I was always really good at that. But until I got that knowledge that it's not about being the absolute best at your job. That's not how you get promoted, by the way. Because then because then they can't afford to lose you out of your position if you're the best at what you do.
That's right.
And then, so it wasn't about that, and that knowledge of how you get to that next level and the next level, and then how you start jumping levels, right? And stuff like that. And then we get in, talking more into marketing and branding yourself and marketing yourself and all those kind of little tweaks. But really, first, you got to switch that brain to another gear.
And let me just say this. Like, as someone who was raised in the everyone gets a trophy generation, watching my peers as adults, like a lot of my peers, we graduated college into the great financial crisis.
Yeah.
And a lot of my peers graduated with $1 bajillion in debt. I remember I was talking with a gal and she got into graduate school and I was like, in New York, I was like, this is going to cost you a lot of money. And she's like, well, I don't really want to know how much it's going to cost. I'll worry about that later. And I almost
What a millennial thing to say. What a millennial thing to say.
Yeah.
I don't really know how much it's going to cost, but I'm going to sign. I'm going to sign it.
And listen, I have grown to, I wouldn't say despise, but that quality that's in my peers that maybe as the child of immigrant parents, I didn't get that, like, everybody's a winner. It was always a very meritocratic, like, don't be. I mean, if I ever came home with a trophy I didn't earn, which rarely happened, like, oh, you finished running the mile. My parents are like, you have asthma. You didn't finish running anything. You're putting this in the garbage, right?
Yeah. I know. It kind of devalues it in a way. And it definitely, causes a lot of people to think that they're entitled to the next level up. And I actually am right on the tail end of the baby boomers. I mean, if you want to really know, like my first job when I got out of college, there was a typewriter sitting on the desk. I had to take a typing test for my first job, even though I had a degree in economics. That's a whole nother issue. But within a few months, I had a computer. So basically I've seen all of this grow from the pre-internet, pre-computer age to what we have now. And, things have changed a lot. And I have had some people that have reported to me on teams where they come in as the junior member of the team and, they're doing, to put it nicely, they're doing the scut work, right? They're earning their stripes by coming in and learning from the other people, but they're shipping the boxes, they're stuffing the bags for events, whatever it is. And I remember one person, and she'd been with us for 3 or 4 months, and she came and she's like, okay, well, I figured out how to do this. I know how to ship the boxes and do all this. I'm ready for what's next. And I was like, this is what's next. Okay, this is a job, and this is what we need to do. It's not, it's a business. We've got to do stuff. And, I can't just move you up to the next level because you feel like you're ready for it. And actually, she didn't last that long.
anybody that asks that kind of question doesn't. And look, and if I had a crystal ball, and Danny and I like to do this, obviously this is a business and marketing, right, news kind of show. We like to make, irrelevant or outlandish claims sometimes. If I had to guess in the future, I've for years called the contract labor revolution, right? Because I think that if you're the best at what you do, you should get paid like it, and if you're not, you should. There's a market for all of you, by the way. If you write books for a living, for example, you should get paid more if you're really good at it. You should get paid in the middle if you're not very good at it. And guess what? There are people that will pay you just because you can write a book. You know what I mean? There's a market for all of you. And what that does is allow that person that does get paid a lot of money because they're really good at their job to go get another high-paying job and not be stuck somewhere or stuck at a certain level of income. I'm a big fan of everybody's income should at least be partially work-based, performance-based, right? That kind of stuff, because it creates an environment where you've got it. If you're better, you should be paid more and that kind of stuff. But what I think the future holds for the next generation, the late millennials, the Generation Z coming up, is the age of the side hustle. You'll have the work that they do. They went to school to be a programmer, to be a whatever, and they'll be taught, because of the internet and the way that things are, shows like this and stuff like that, to go, hey, you need to have your work you do 45 hours a week, and you need to have a podcast, or you need to have a, a network, affiliate marketing, or whatever it may be, that side hustle, I think. And then as it grows, so do you, right? You'll get more promotions at work. You'll get more promotions in your bank account, because it's not going to happen with just one. It's just not, unless you're the next app developer or the next whatever, you know what I mean? Unless you're playing the lottery.
Well, the thing is, even about the next app developer, a lot of those guys, those things started as a side hustle, and maybe they developed 10 apps before one of them, went viral. What you were talking about in terms of like the income, that's like basic economics, right? It's supply and demand. People who are more talented, there's going to be more demand for them. And, people that don't maybe have a talent are going to do something that's pretty basic. It's going to be more of a commodity type thing. Like, we just need a body in this role. And one of the things that I really try to help people with, and when I'm working with them on sort of career coaching, is to think about, like, what are the things that you do well that are more high value work? And if it's something that you like to do, like, how do you get credentialed so people understand that they should pay you more for that? How do you position yourself? How do you brand yourself so that you get recognized for that thing that you're good at, and you can make more money doing that? I think a lot of, I loved what you were saying about, people being sort of trained as employees, right? And rather than somebody who's like, hey, I'm going to run this business. I think a lot of people really put their destinies, their careers in the hand of somebody else. Like, oh, well, I got a job here, and now it's up to my boss to promote me. And that's a lot about what I talk about in my book. It's like, build your network, expand your skill set, step outside the box. Like, think about, what else could you do? What do you want to do? What are you good at? How do you package yourself, and market yourself like a product, not just like, hey, here I am, I already mastered this. What's next?
Well, look, the reality of it is, it's still true in 2021, which is hard to say, that most people, and I'm going to apologize for the way I phrase this, but most people still fall back asswards into the job that they have, right? They got the first job they got because their mom or dad worked with the supervisor of this pharmacy or this whatever, or they were told to go over here. And then, my neighbor over here has a daughter that, she worked at the movie theater first, and then a friend of hers went into Dairy Queen because they paid more, and now she went to Dairy Queen, and now she's an assistant manager for Dairy Queen at 19. Well, why did that happen to her and not the person that still works over at the movie theater, right? Or, so they fall back asswards into these, career paths. Nobody at any level is really figuring out. The best violinist in the world maybe has never had access to a violin, right? The best programmer in the world may not currently have a computer, right, or access to one. We have completely skipped over trying to figure out who's actually better at anything and put it all 100% on us as an individual, and hopefully you care enough to figure that out. And what we now know is 80 to 90% of us don't. We find a job that pays us money. If we don't like that job or don't want to do that job for long enough, we go out and we find another job that we follow this person over to that job, right? And do that for as long as they'll pay us for it, right? And hopefully make more money and that kind of stuff. So it really does. And again, going back to your, I'm sure that's what 90% of your coaching is, hey, let's actually sit down and figure this out. What are your strengths? What do those strengths actually link to? And that gets back to what we said before. It really is the difference between the people that have gotten to where they want to go, which, knock on wood, I you know what I mean? I got there by learning. But it's that information, how to connect those dots and get to that next level that needs to the next level. And there's a reason people with money raise kids with money, because they teach their kids those things that you're not taught.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing that I would say also is that, it's important to look at your strengths and so forth, but it's also really important to think about, what do you want to do? Because Danny, let me just finish this thought. The thing that I think, and I'm so glad that when I was first starting my career, my boyfriend's mom gave me a book called What Color Is Your Parachute? And she said, do this before you start interviewing or applying for jobs. And what I got out of that book was, look at yourself. Yeah, look at what your strengths are, look at what your skills are, but also look at, what do you like to do? And if you can find that sweet spot between, what do you like to do? What are you good at? And what does the marketplace need? You're going to be a lot happier than if you're just like, hey, I need a job. Because I see it all the time. People come to me and they've been working in some field for 10 or 15 or 20 years. And they're like, I make way too much money, do anything else, but I really hate my job. And that's a tough place to be.
Yeah, and let me just sum up, and then I want to jump into some of these stories we have prepped for you, Terry. I don't feel like my generation was ever asked to be, like, to peer into themselves, like to ask that question about self-awareness. And when you were talking about, like, they feel entitled, I think there's just a general, and it took Gary Vee saying this to me to my face in 2014. Something self-awareness. I don't remember what he said leading up to it, but it was that one phrase. It was like that scene in The Matrix where I took the red pill. Over the next 4 weeks, I went through my closet. I got rid of all of the clothes that were black or gray, because that's the only colors I ever wore. It completely changed how I thought about my business. It changed how I thought about everything, because I was like, yeah, if I don't like doing it, it's not who I am. It's out the door. Right. And that was such to me, it was a revolutionary, like, red pilling moment in my life where I stopped being one guy and I started being a completely different guy. And with that, I want to ask you this question. We got in contact with you and we got to know you over an app called Matchmaker.fm.
Which doesn't sound like a podcasting help thing at all.
It sounds a little bit like
a dating website. It sounds like a dating site.
It does. When Danny said, hey, I registered for a matchmaking.fm, I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, he's like, listen, man, I'm married. I was just like, no, you don't get it. And there's another website that's similar in nature called Wildcast. And my thought process or question here is, with Dos Equis, with everything that happened in 2020, do you feel like this silo, I would call it a LinkedIn type silo, where it's a siloed type networking website? Because we can't listen. I know Big Man from a networking event. We built a friendship and a business because we were the only two people in the networking event. They're like, we have to stand because these stools are a little shaky, like,
Oh yeah.
And then later found out that we just buy the exact same shirt in the exact same size, have the same doctor, drive the same truck.
You can trade clothes.
Yeah, it's
well,
weird.
and Danny's like a hard rash to get away. You know what I mean? Like, once it's there, it's just
And so, like, I was just wondering, like, how do you feel like this siloed networking online? Do you think it's here to stay, or are people, like you were saying, grow your network? Do you still think there needs to be that personal connection, you know?
Well, I mean, we're having a personal connection. And I've actually met a ton of people on Matchmaker FM, and the other one that I actually know of is Podbooker, which is similar. And I think that those are really great, and they're really targeted, right? Like, if you want to be a guest or you have a podcast, that's a great place to go. And they result in a personal connection, right? We're having, you can have some really open, personal conversations on podcasts. And I love it because, I really feel like you get to know people, right? You hear a lot of great stories, you hear people's opinions, experiences. I think it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and there's other websites out there for creatives to know. And I just think it's so fascinating that I relate it in some way to like dating websites, and how, for the people not in my generation, like we went from having one or two choices, that like from Match to eHarmony, to having 1,000 different apps
Yeah.
and websites
Yeah.
to choose from. And like, listen, I'm a hit on Farmers Only and JDate, and there's 1,000 reasons why that's hilarious.
That's so funny.
Yeah, and so I just think that there is, so if you're out there, there's such a niche. There's even a Tinder style app for networking, which was out a bajillion years ago, but I think now is going to find a home. And my question, or my thought, is like, what happens to a site like an app like Meetup, which is acquired by WeWork?
Yeah.
in a universe where some of that in-person networking is gone or dead, or just we're not going to do it in the future because this is way more efficient.
Right. I don't know. I mean, those are things that I'm really curious to see what happens. And I love kind of like looking down the road and saying, okay, well, these two roads seem to be coming together in this certain place, but you just never know. Are they going to pivot? Is somebody else going to buy them? Will people go back to really wanting, the pent up demand of having to be stuck at home on Zoom all the time? Are people going to go out and, happy days are here again? Is it going to be like the Roaring '20s, coming out of World War I? I don't know. I actually look forward to going into a crowded bar and having a few drinks among people that I don't know. That'll be nice to be able to do that.
Well, my wife won't let me get away with that one, but I do, however, agree with the sentiment there. And look, I think, again, like we were talking about the future being, contracts and stuff like that. I think as we grow in this information age, niche marketing is just where the more value is, right? If podcasters can, like on this site, right, matchmaker.fm, can specifically have a place where they can go and only talk to other podcasters. I think look, you already see it in LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn got a little bit more like Facebook, and now they're starting to get their algorithm more to try and match people that really do have this sense of, okay, y'all are in the same industry, you're talking about the same things, you're posting about the same things, and that kind of stuff. I think LinkedIn sees it as well from a business and personal standpoint. The fact is that if you want to grow as a podcast, as any form of business, you have to be very niche oriented, right? We live in a world that anybody can turn on a camera, a microphone, pick up their cell phone, and record a podcast, record a video, and guess what? A pretty good one, right? So you've got to be able to find people out there so that you can continue to grow and break through the swarm. Right, the swarm, so to speak, and that kind of stuff. So I think I think you're just going to see more and more places or companies like that in the industry to continue to get people to network. Twitter's really trying it right now. If you're on Twitter right now with any kind of podcast, which obviously we have an Idiots versus Idiots is our Twitter handle, right?
It's Idiots v Idiots. Yikes, dude.
What? And no, it's not. I'm the one that changed it. It's Idiots versus Idiots.
No, you
Anyway,
spelled idiots wrong. I had to fix it. This is a nightmare.
see, there you go.
Working with
There's
you is a
Danny.
disaster.
Oh yeah, whatever. All right. The point is, yeah, I'm the one with the white background. All right. But the point is we're on Twitter, and every day I get notifications off of our Twitter account where we're followed by another podcasting Twitter account that is, essentially an aggregate of podcasts, right? And they're trying to get podcasters to interact with each other,
Yeah.
and I try to answer some of the questions. I'm like, okay, what's your favorite, who's your favorite you ever interviewed or whatever? And they're just trying to get people to interact, right? And that kind of stuff. And it's just, and guess what? Something like that, especially on Twitter, is not just, I still have, and again, I'm an old person, wrapped my brain around the fact that the what we do in podcasting and what you do in podcasting, we haven't even talked about your podcast show as well, which I love the name, by the way, the Mambo.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Marketing Mambo. Yeah.
Marketing Mambo. I like it. That it, regardless of where you record or how you record, once you put it out there on the interwebs, as they say, the internet, that it really can, your viewers and your people can come from anywhere in the world. Like anywhere.
Amazing. I know. It's so awesome. I actually was on a podcast a little bit earlier, right before I got on with you guys, with somebody in the UK. I've talked to people in South Africa. I was talking with somebody yesterday in Australia. And I really think that because we've been sort of stuck at home and having to Zoom, that we, very quickly realized, like, well, if I'm Zooming, I can Zoom with people anywhere. I mean, I talked to a lady that was in China this morning about, like, possibly using her VA service, which is in the Philippines, by the way. But it's amazing how, like, the walls and the gates that used to be in place are down. And how quickly we've adopted this, like, yeah, I can meet with the person anywhere, like right here on my screen.
Right. And
what's cool.
What's fascinating to me, and part of the reason Big Man and I do this, is there has now been the playing field has been leveled. I'm doing I'm doing a show that is not near the quality, but I'm throwing a stone at night, late night comedy television. It blows my mind that the Jimmies, all of whom I find infuriating to think about. But I'm fascinated that we're all doing the same thing, and we're fascinated. I'm fascinated by that concept,
Right.
So.
Well, and that's why, and we've said this on previous episodes, Danny and I did a podcast years ago, and we got off of it because he moved away, and now he's moved back. But getting him to agree that, hey, this technology exists, right? Like he just said. I mean, the late night talk shows are using the same platforms we're using to do this kind of show, right?
True.
And then getting, and then you add that to, like, you're talking about this matchmaker.fm, and you can get guests from like you said, all around the world. I never, and look, the Big Man in real estate, I own part of a real estate that we've leveraged this kind of stuff for years to grow, right, and have education and stuff like that. And when I'm sitting there across from someone, we opened up the UK, and we opened up Australia, and we opened up Puerto Rico, and right, and I can do that from my home in Austin, Texas, without again. Like I said, I wrote a book and had to travel around the country and, you know what I mean, do seminars and stuff like that because it was not widely accepted like this yet. And then here we are. If I came out with another book tomorrow, I wouldn't go anywhere. Are you crazy?
Right.
Not even, I wouldn't go anywhere. I would just set up Zoom meetings every Friday for 6 months and not leave my office, right? Like that's exactly what I would do, So, but again, to bring it back, yes, I think the niche marketing stuff is not only the future. I think really it is the now as far as where you should be spending your time. Whether it's selling a book, there are plenty of places out there that, hey, you know what I mean? Let's talk about our books. Let's talk about writing. Let's talk about that kind of stuff. Podcasting, obviously, merchandising, real estate, whatever it is your deal is, there's unique environments out there for you to peddle your goods and make plenty of friends and meet people along the way.
Well, the question, Big Man, was niche networking. So you butchered that. But sorry, Terry, I interrupted you, but then I have another
That's-
question for you.
I was going to say, it's become extremely democratic, right? You got an idea, you can put it out there and you can grow your audience. I mean, maybe it's not going to be a huge audience, but it's probably going to be people that are really into whatever it is that you're talking about. If we think back to the old days, like when I was growing up, there were like 3 TV stations, right? And so everything was like very general, right? They didn't now it's like, there's hundreds of outlets, between cable and the streaming services and all of that. There's something for everybody out there. So it makes it a lot more democratic, and it makes it a lot easier to be able to find your audience. And, I want to like bring this, I don't know, we'll see, hopefully it'll like fit into what we're talking about here, but I've got 3 kids, and I can remember like when my sons are 21 and 23, and I can remember when they were like, I don't know, 11 or 12 years old, they had a digital camera, and they were like making movies on the digital camera. And then actually both of them studied film in college. And, people can shoot a whole movie on their iPhone now. But like when I was growing up, you couldn't do that. You didn't have access to even the equipment, because it wasn't digital. You needed to like buy film. It was expensive. You needed to have access to a camera that was probably thousands of dollars, be able to develop the film. Like, it was very expensive. It was a big hurdle to be able to even do anything. And you didn't have access to information either. Like, you had to, ingratiate yourself to somebody who had the information, right? And I actually think that, part of the reason why kids now are like, maybe they don't respect adults as much is because they don't need them, right? They can just go on YouTube and figure out how to do stuff instead of like asking their parents or listening to their teacher. They're like, I don't need you. I can go on there and learn how to play guitar, or, watch a video on whatever I'm studying at school that maybe they're going to explain it better than my teacher did. It just makes everything a lot easier and a lot more democratic. You don't need to,
Right.
under the control of somebody.
Right. Let me give you an example. I've been a car nerd my entire life. And my parents are immigrants from a country like India, like, South
Are you
America.
sure you're trying to say just nerd, right? Did you have to leave the car in there? Or just...
Yeah, no,
I just want to be clear with our audience.
And I remember when I had been 14, and my sister worked at the mall, and she took me to the mall to buy me something for my birthday. And there was this DVD called Mischief, and it was these guys who basically filmed extremely illegal street races. And,
okay.
Yeah, and there was another group called Super Speeders, and I'm actually trying to get Rob from there on our show. But what is fascinating to me is, as like, I'm in my 30s, I can go on YouTube right now and pick between. When I say that the quality of the content blows my mind, I'm talking like, on YouTube, I can pick between guys who are into diesel trucks or JDM, which is the Japanese car scene, whatever it is. And for that revolution to happen in my lifetime, like going to a mall, seeing a DVD in a Foot Locker or a Champs or something.
Yeah.
I think it was one of those, because I was always kind of a chunky kid. So the coolest thing you could buy me was sneakers, and, but it was, that for that, and that what's unfortunate too, to kind of, tie into some of the other things you were saying, was that those guys who made those DVDs, it was harder for them to transition into like figuring out how to survive on YouTube, but they inspired an entire generation of automotive YouTubers. Now, speaking of automotive YouTubing, and you as the queen of marketing,
Yep,
I'm so curious to get your thoughts on if you saw that General Motors, after like 70 years or something, rebranded its logo for the electric age, and I feel like their logo just isn't plugged in.
Okay, is it really a rebrand? Because what it is,
well, they rebranded the logo. It's not a rebrand. It's an updated logo, and it looks silly.
Yeah,
okay,
I don't like it.
But is it updated?
Like it.
No, it's still GM. They just made the M small. That's all they did.
No, they made it lowercase, and they like.
Yeah. I don't like it, and I mean, maybe part of it is because, I'm older than both of you guys. And, I can remember my parents' car when I was growing up was a Chevy Impala. So like that GM was like on the car,
Yeah.
I remember, seeing that. And to me, I feel like that has meaning. And to me, I feel like even though things are evolving and even though Elon Musk is the richest man in the world, I believe that GM still represents American manufacturing might. And when I look at that old logo, I mean, maybe it's a little nostalgia on my part, but like that means something. And I see a lot of like really established brands where they're feeling the pressure from these upstarts. And I think a lot of times like throw away a lot of equity by trying to keep up with the cool kids, and I think I read in that article that it took them 5 months to do that project. That wasn't enough time, quite frankly. I
What
don't know
else could
why
you
they
have?
felt the pressure.
What
Yeah, go
else
ahead.
could you have spent that money on? Right, that research time on that whatever, because whatever you ended up without the other end, you got hosed for. Okay, I'm sorry. Like what?
Yeah, it doesn't have, I don't like it. And I also feel like, electric, whatever, like what's going to happen after that, right? Like when it's
Mm-hmm.
not electric, I feel like they stand for transportation, not, oh, we're rebranding for the electric age. I think the brand needs to be more than that. Like the old logo doesn't like have a gas can on it. It's not, uh, I think more thought and probably more research should have gone into it. And I don't know, maybe I'm not the target audience, but I have a lot of opinions about graphic design and logos and so forth. And when I saw that new logo, I was like,
Yeah.
ick. It
Well,
does not say strength, which I
Danny is
think that's what
a
GM should.
Danny is a font Nazi, so you gotta be careful with his
hmm
fonts and stuff like that.
I'm like really I wouldn't say I'm a font Nazi, but I worked in marketing for 30 years, you guys. Like I
Yeah.
was thinking about what does this color say? Does this
Oh,
font speak to me? And
huh.
that font does
Thought
not speak to
provoking.
me. It doesn't
Well,
speak to me. It's
so
Yeah.
weird
y'all
in
y'all
my
both come
mind.
from it. Y'all both come from it from a right. Like I get that those are a thing. Like okay, what does the color say to you, or what does the font and that kind of stuff.
hmm
Where I'm more of an analytical thinker. Like to
hmm
me, there's hey, you calm down. I'm an analytical thinker in that I am a numbers nerd. Does this
Uh-huh.
change get General Motors? Do they sell another car? Do they sell another, right? Did they get the next generation on General Motors because they changed this logo? No, right? So if
No.
whatever, I don't know what their thought process was other than sometimes you do things just to have a change or just to update something or just to be, talked about in the
Yeah, but
whatever.
listen, if
This
you're
wasn't that.
GM, you do not do this. This is like the new Coke debacle from like I
Yes.
don't know, the 80s or 90s.
Yes.
Like if you
Mm-hmm.
are an icon, you don't just be like we need to update things just for the heck of it. And
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 listen.
also to me what it shows though is that they are worried about their positioning and
See,
that
now I
they
agree
feel
with
like
that.
they've got to do something. But I actually it's funny because like on my podcast, Marketing Mambo, I'm talking to marketers. I'm talking to people who like live, eat, breathe this. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is, or just tends to come up a lot, is that the brand is not the logo. Okay.
Mm-mm.
Like, so
Right.
updating the logo does not really do anything for you. Like, you've got to rethink everything. So
And
maybe, I don't know what they're doing with their electric car lineup and all that kind of stuff, but they've got to rethink everything. I mean, maybe even think about like, how are you selling the cars? You got this Carvana that's like selling them in like
yes,
car vending machines.
I've actually worked with Carvana before. And what's fascinating is my generation, I think, is moving away from, and I don't know that it's necessarily with everything that happened in 2020. I think it put a big wrench in that, like, we're not going to own anything. We're going to rent an
hmm
apartment and take
Yeah.
an Uber everywhere. I think that changes so much of the psyche. And I don't think there is a marketer at a company out there who is contemplating the long-term consequences of what, the Dos Equis and how that's going to impact how I know my friends who have lived in a city their whole life was like, I'm getting out of a city. I'm going to go buy a farm. I was like, you don't know anything about farming. But getting back to this GM thing, here's what I think. I think they're, like you said, they're really concerned about how do they survive.
Yeah.
And there's a bajillion startups, electric car startups coming out of Asia. And they're really concerned that, when I was a kid, talking about somebody driving a Hyundai or a Kia was a hilarious joke. Like it wasn't like, oh, that's a nice. But now it's like they're nice cars, and it's
in the consideration set when it's time to go buy a new car. And they've been really, really smart about how they've overcome people's resistance. Also, like with their long-term warranties, right?
Yeah.
Because I agree with you. I remember if somebody bought a Hyundai, you'd be like, what? Right? Like they must really be hurting.
You'd be like, let's put together a collection for them or something.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So they can get a bus pass because that's the car should have come with one.
Well, but in the 90s, they both did two things. The foreign car manufacturers got better at making cars, and American manufacturers got worse, right? All of the cars that were made in the 90s, even the quote-unquote muscle cars, your Mustangs, were garbage. They made them as cheaply as they could make them, right? And in the 90s, especially mid to late 90s and early 2000s, they made, and it created an average, right, of your cars. Your General Motors much better than your Hyundai or whatever else, and that was a mistake on General Motors' part, Ford's part, Chrysler at the time's part, and then when the market crashed, and it did, right, which was partially caused by leases, but they were losing money on leases. All these cars that people were leasing and turning over and stuff like that, they were losing money on them hands over fists when they were selling them on the other side. When they, and it goes, okay, wait a minute, we can't just make a car that lasts 3 or 4 years and expect everybody to buy them because nobody's doing it now, right? So they had to start making cars. But at that point, it was too late. But I agree with you. I don't know. Look, we all know, just like Coca-Cola, right? We talked about that. Sometimes big companies that you think, oh, well, they're massive companies, they must have eggheads with making all their decisions for them, don't always make the best decisions, right? I don't know that General Motors, as General Motors today, should really be scared of NIO coming, you know what I mean? Coming, from an Asian country.
Yeah.
Or Tesla, for that example. They're different products still. Now, should they be worried them down the line? Should it scare them right now? That's more of a psychological question than an on-paper question, right?
Well, let me put it to you this way, and relating it to Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Coca-Cola and Pepsi are the players in the beverage industry.
Sure.
There is one guy that came in, Red Bull, but what's interesting is those companies literally own everything that you ever drink. Like what they wait for is they wait for a startup to go out there, start a beverage, find a co-packer, they build the whole infrastructure, they find their niche market, and then Pepsi-Cola comes in or Pepsi comes in and says, we're writing a big fat check. And I think General Motors is like what they screwed up was not understanding that the consumer at large globally still wants to, there is a early first adopter for that jumps on every bandwagon. Like, I always have the newest phone, whatever. That's not so, but that market is so small, and they have to understand that the larger market for them is the general population, general consumer is going to go, Tesla? What's a Tesla? My mother's a wonderful lady. She's not stupid. Has no idea that she drives a Kia. She just knows silver car. So, like, I think to play to that, like, the smartest thing they could have done is they could have waited for one of these other companies to pop up and to really thrive and go, listen, you kids know nothing about, you get tech, but you don't get selling cars.
I still think that's what's going to happen. I think
Rivian's deal right now with Ford, even though it got chopped up a little bit, one of the descendants of Ford is on their board. They're going to get swallowed by Ford, right? And I think their big mistake, General Motors' big mistake was not they did this logo rebrand to try and communicate to the wider market. We are thinking about the electric future.
We're cool.
Exactly. When what I want to know is, you people actually understand selling cars and infrastructure that goes along with it. Please tell me
Mhm.
you have a better warranty plan than Tesla. Like
Right.
Tesla's,
I couldn't agree more. And I to me, I feel like it signals like fear in a way, because they could have kept the logo exactly the way it is and, you know, focused their investments in different ways and come out with some new cars and so forth. I mean, they've got the balance sheet to be able to do this stuff, right?
right?
Like even if like other companies are nibbling around the edges, they're still
Mm-hmm.
huge. And they still have the money to invest. I just I think it's kind of crazy. I mean, and having worked in marketing for a long time, you know, I always say like start with strategy, right? Like changing the logo or coming up with a new ad campaign is not going to do anything, right? Like if it's not aligned with everything else that's going on. And I mean, I certainly haven't seen. I mean, maybe I'm missing something, but I haven't seen any signals in the marketplace that, you know, that they've stepped up and they're leading uh, in the electric arena. And honestly, changing the logo, I think people are going to be like, "What's that? Like, is that a new
Yeah,
app or
Yeah.
something?"
I think, you know, and just to kind of wrap this one up, I think their big mistake was, I think what this communicated to me as a marketing guy was y'all are scared. And that is not what I want a large multinational to communicate to me regarding
Right,
anything. I'm
right.
a, you know, I used to call myself a Chevy guy. I drive whatever car I buy, but I'm just saying, like,
Hmm.
I think what they communicated, and they, you know, to their point though, they are like, they're saying Cadillac will be all electric by
Hmm.
2035. You know, they
Oh,
came
cool.
out with that you know, Hummer EV thing.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think if they had spent more time talking about the technology that they're rolling out, which they are rolling out a ton of it, I
Hmm.
think this story, which is their own fault for doing it, I
Mm-hmm.
think it distracted from the larger point of, hey, we're actually making like groundbreaking fronts on electric cars, but I think they're also betting on a future where how rapidly can you expand electric car infrastructure? Like there are
Hmm.
Right.
still so many unanswered questions of, if I got to go from Austin to Dallas
Yeah.
and I have to stop in like Paris,
Waco.
Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah, Waco. I got to stop somewhere to gas up, and it's going to be 2 hours to charge. Like,
Yeah.
I'm taking a truck with a gas
That's
in it.
I yeah, honestly, that's what I can remember a few years ago. I don't know, it's been a while since we bought a new car, but I remember, you know, my son was probably like middle school or something. He was like, "Oh, are we going to get a Prius?" Well, I was like, "No."
Yeah.
Not getting a Prius. I mean, not that I'm against them, but exactly what
No,
you're
I'm
saying is
against
I'm
them.
like, well, I'm kind of like, you know, I don't really fully understand them. I don't know where you're supposed to like plug them in. You know, and if I'm driving somewhere, I know how to get gas, right? And it takes like 5 minutes to get gas. Like I don't know what you're supposed to do, and it's not a sure thing for me to know that if I'm driving from here to California that I'm going to know all the places I have to stop to charge up,
Yeah,
right? It just
and
didn't seem practical to me.
so dear GM from Idiots versus Idiots, spend less time rebranding your logo and like
Mm-hmm.
15 minutes educating the consumer about how the consumer can consume your product,
Right.
which is an
Yeah,
Absolutely.
electric
yeah,
car.
Well, and keep in
yeah.
mind, again, from a marketing standpoint, just like New Coke, they can reverse this at any time, right? They can
I think they
Teflon this at
should.
any time and go, like, oh, yeah, well, what we really meant was that was General Motors' electric division, but where our other division's going to keep, right? And yes, we spent
Yeah.
$1 billion on it, but we'll just write that off as a loss and go on about our business. So at any time, they could really change directions, go right back to their other logo, just like New Coke did, and several other
Hmm.
companies that have made poor marketing decisions that just
Yeah.
didn't test well in the marketplace. Even though a lot of
Hmm.
times you look at it and go, really? Like how many people did that get through when they spent the commercial
Right.
dollars?
Who was in the focus group, right? Was it like somebody that already drank the Kool-Aid
Right.
or,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
I also wonder like how many people that were really dedicated GM customers were were in the focus group because, you know, they're going to be leaving people behind. And I mean, maybe part of it is like we don't care because you know, they're going to die off, you know, and
Well, and they're
we're
getting
repositioning ourselves for a younger generation.
that company's getting paid too, right? That company that came out with that logo,
Yeah.
and the company that got
they're
paid to shoot the
firm,
commercial, and the company that got paid to all the little steps that this took. All of those companies got paid, whether they use this information or not.
Yeah.
You know, so they're all a cog in that, and at some level, you think somebody would go, "Hey, yo, this is dumb," right? And no, we're too far along the process now, Doug. Calm down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I've been on the inside of those kind of conversations. Sometimes the train gets rolling in a certain direction, and there ain't no stopping it.
One of the
there
biggest
might
reasons
have
I
been
no
some,
longer work in corporate America, right?
Yeah,
Because
there
could
might be
never.
some powerful people that believe that, and you know, and then it's just too hard. Or maybe there were people saying, I don't think so, and a lot of times they get branded, you know, like, oh, you're just a naysayer, and this is the direction we have to go in. But I don't know. For my opinion, I don't like it.
Yeah, in my last corporate marketing gig, I was a project manager, and like I just knew that the people I worked with, if I ever had a negative opinion, it would come off as like, you're just being a downer. So I was like,
Yeah.
everything's
Yeah.
fantastic. And I'm like, let's just sink the boat. I don't care.
Yeah. You know what? I mean, it's interesting. And I mean, not to like get into the whole like diversity thing, but the reality is, and like I thought often in the corporate world, that it's not just like diversity when it comes to gender or, you know, race or
Whatever,
sexual
yeah.
orientation. It's also diversity of thought. Right. And one of the things that a lot of times was really frustrated by is that you'd be in a meeting, and if you did bring up a different point of view that actually could help the project be better, that if there was somebody that, you know, maybe was a little higher up, or there was a few people that were a little cabal that like really wanted this to happen, that they would really, you know, minimize somebody else's voice rather than being like, well, maybe that person has a point. Right. And we've seen a lot of things that have happened that you're like, really? Like the new Coke thing. I'm like, really? Like, you got 100-year-old company, and this is your flagship product, and you're going to push it to the side and come out with new Coke? Like, who said they wanted that?
Right. And listen, to what you're to the point that you're making, to every large company, small company, if you're concerned about diversity, I've been brown my entire life. The only diversity that matters is diversity of thought. If you think that it matters,
she was talking about diversity of thought, Danny.
That's what I'm agreeing
why does the brown
with her.
person got to make it about them? Okay, no, come on, Danny. She was
with
talking
her.
about diversity of thought. Go ahead,
I'm
Danny.
agreeing with her, and I'm saying like that is the only thing that matters, because I realized that and part of the reason we're doing this podcast is like I have a wacky sensibility that I'm only in my 30s figuring out how to bet on myself, and not bet on myself, but bet on what I think to be is just what I think is going to happen, which is, and listen, as much as that concept might fail for a lot of people, there was a handful of people who bet against the United States of America's housing market in 2006 and 7, and all of those guys could be off on a yacht somewhere off the coast of Fiji right now if they wanted to, because they put so many dollars in their pocket. And so, closing this this particular subject, if you our learning moment, the more you know. If you have a wacky concept or idea at your office, you might be better off just saying it, and if it doesn't turn out the way you expect, you might leave being able to do something better with your time, because you're betting on the wackiness of how you see the world and the universe around you. Because if the last however many years have taught us anything, is there is a market. There's a saying in the car business, there's an ass for every seat. And that is true of the wider market. And it's only easier now that you can get on TikTok or whatever and find a weird niche and sell them your thing, or talk about whatever, or you're a consultant. And you could tell them, hey, nobody wants your dumb new logo. Put out a series of 5-minute videos about how electric cars, you shouldn't be afraid of a General Motors electric car for this reason. I think back to that clip from Mad Men where he goes, listen, all the cigarettes are the same. They're all the same process. And the government says you can't advertise for cigarettes or whatever, or the health benefits. And the main character goes, yeah, it's toasted. He's like, yeah, but everybody's cigarettes are toasted. He's like, no, everyone else's cigarettes give people cancer. Your cigarettes are toasted.
Yeah.
General Motors
Don
goes,
Draper.
yes, Don Draper, a classic thing. But
Great show.
Love that
Great
show.
General Motors should have gone, listen, if you want to go from Chicago to Los Angeles or Houston to Dallas in a Tesla, you might have to wait an hour. But our thing, blah, 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 generator, gas jet, whatever it is, because their Volts have gas generators.
Right.
That completely changes the dialogue about electric cars.
What are you selling? Nobody wants to buy a car. People want to buy a way to get from here to there. You know, I was talking with somebody the other day, and we were talking about the way that Steve Jobs talked about the iPod. It was 1,000 songs in your pocket. It was not an MP3 player. Who the freak cares about that, right?
Right.
What do people want? They want music in their pocket.
Yeah, that's wild. So that's so true. Whenever people talk about Steve Jobs, and this is a caveat, and this is going down a rabbit hole here, but I'm such an anti-Apple guy, and as like a graphic designer, marketing person, I'm the only person in that field that hates Apple.
Yeah.
So whenever, and the genius of his company, the genius of his branding, all of it cannot be denied. But anytime somebody starts talking about it, I'm just like, ugh. So pretentious. I'm just kidding.
I know. It's always like the go-to.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that the first computer I ever bought personally was a Mac. And then, you know, I work for a bank. And so the next computer I got was a PC, because back in the day, you know, there wasn't compatibility between Macs and PCs. And I recently went back to, you know, I had an iPhone, I had an iPad, and I recently, last year, when I replaced my computer, I got a AirBook, and now I just got the Air, and they make it so freaking easy. Everything works together. So nice.
No, you went back to the dark side. No, I'm sorry. I can't. Dan,
you guys gonna kick me off?
The interview.
No, I'm sorry. Interview is over. Interview over. You're kicked out.
Well, okay. We're close enough here. Let's land this plane. Two companies are setting up to do an IPO, StockX and Poshmark. And I'm curious, as a marketer, do you think that eBay, which was where all of these transactions were happening, but they lost faith in the consumer lost faith in eBay because they're like, I might buy something that's fake. So with StockX and Poshmark, I don't know if it's Poshmark or I might be thinking of Real or one of these companies, but the general concept is they specialize in high-end couture goods. That's what Poshmark does. I don't think I'm the target market for Poshmark, but
I bought from them. I have bought from them. And yeah, I love that you guys included that article, because I have used eBay for a really long time. Like, even to the point where I remember when I first started using eBay that you would have to send a check ahead of time and then like wait for it to clear. And then you'd be like, okay, now I can send this. And then I also remember when they got PayPal, and I had to wait for them to send me like this, you know, thing in the mail.
Yeah.
You know, with the code.
Yes.
Just crazy to think. I mean, it's like at least 20 years ago that, you know, since I've been using them, and I've sold a lot of stuff. I've sold and bought a lot of stuff on eBay. And I agree with you. I feel like the quality of what's on eBay has really diminished. I think that there are these upstarts that recognized, you know, people don't want to have to like dig through, you know, 20 pages of like Chinese knockoff stuff that's not coming from like an individual, right? Like, that's one of the things that bugs me, is I go and I'm like looking for something, hoping like, oh, well, maybe somebody has like this, you know, this purse that's lightly used that I want. And then I go and it's like, I have to go through all these pages of stuff that's not like a real person selling. It's like a seller that's importing stuff from China or something, right? It's not person to person, you know. And so, yeah, I think that these like Poshmarks and the Thread Up and the other one that you mentioned,
StockX,
StockX, yeah, that I think that they sort of like saw the opportunity and came in and like overtook a sweet spot. and I think there's like some sneaker ones too.
That's
Like,
StockX. Yeah.
that's StockX. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
one of my sons used to be like a real sneakerhead.
Okay.
And also I think it's ThreadUp. You actually send your clothes into them, and then they'll go through them, and they want to make sure that they're in really good shape, that they're genuine. And if there's anything that doesn't meet their standards, they actually donate it to charity. And I think that just provides like an additional layer of confidence that you really are buying a real designer or high-end boutique type piece of clothing, and that it's not going to be some knockoff.
Yeah, because I know I'm an avid horophile or watch collector, and the watch collecting community is like most of us can spot a fake Rolex or a fake Omega or whatever, but when you get into some of the older stuff, there are so many companies that Crown and Caliber is one of them, where you send your piece to them, they have a Swiss watchmaker look it over, and all this stuff. But I think I'm nostalgic for the old days of eBay. I had started e-commerce back in a bajillion years ago on eBay. And I think, like you said, like the biggest place where they screwed up or they missed the mark was when when Amazon became the e-commerce behemoth that it is today. They thought, okay, we're going to try to compete with them, right? And instead of trying to be like, okay, how can we be unique in comparison to and I don't know if they could have predicted the coming ubiquity of Amazon. I think what they could or should have done is been like, okay, we can, because they had the capital to go out and develop a system where we're going to, how many people do you got to hire? Not that many. It's probably 50 people to process goods and then to make sure they're quality, reliable, and legitimate goods. And I wonder if companies like eBay should go acquire some of these smaller ones,
Well, see, I'm going to take kind of devil's advocate to both of you here. I don't think eBay gave a crap about, well, A, what any of us think, but B, look, they get paid per transaction, right?
Really?
they get paid per transaction. In their way, they're winning. So all of these people that are importing from China, all of these drop ship companies and everybody look, they get paid every time something sells on their platform. They're making billions of dollars for it. And if it shut down tomorrow, they're still going to walk away billionaires from it as far as the people that own this stuff. So from them, it's a win. It's like asking, we were just talking about General Motors. It's like trying to ask General Motors about some startup over here trying to make, right? Electric wheel engines or something like that.
You're wrong.
Whatever. I'm not wrong.
Because they switched their logo because they're scared. So.
Oh dear God, man.
They're wrong.
Here's the point. The point is I think I do agree with you, however, that eBay ultimately, if this stuff like Poshmark, like StockX and this kind of stuff get to a certain point, a certain revenue point, then a company like an Amazon, like an eBay or whatever will acquire them and pull them up. As far as them going IPO, we keep going through. Look, in the mid 90s and late 90s, we did this, right? This trend of IPOs in technology, right? And
when I was in elementary school,
well,
continue.
Okay, again, while you were in elementary school, so you don't know, I'm telling you that we, in the mid and late 90s, we went through a tech bubble where every company that was tech related went into IPO, raised millions of dollars, right, or whatever, and then the bubble burst because half of them that were going IPO were garbage companies. They didn't actually provide a service. They didn't, you know what I mean? And then the bubble
giving stuff away left and right. I remember those days. Like, you could just go online and put your email in, and they'd send you like a first aid kit, a t-shirt. I mean, it was crazy. I think there was so much investment by people that wanted to get on the tech wave, right? And they had so much money, they were giving shit away left and right.
Because that was the hot item, right? Tech. Anything tech. Buy it because it'll make you a millionaire. And it just didn't have been the case. I think we're going through another one of those right now with ideas. Danny and you and I have talked about it on this podcast before about I don't know how some companies, especially these new companies going IPO, how they get these evaluations. Like the
Valuation.
Nikola and all
Valuation.
whatever valuation. The point is
yeah.
how does a company that has yet to develop a product have a valuation of hundreds of millions of dollars, right? It's insane to me. So again, it goes back to in stock market, how do we rate companies and how do we whatever, and you get into these fundamentals of the stock market. This is really boring to talk about, which is why I only invest in companies that have fundamentals in the stock market, because these companies like this, just because they have this IPO in Poshmark, for example, could come up with an evaluation and just say, well, we're a $1 billion company and we're going IPO, and then 6 months from now you find out that they're bleeding money, right? And then all of a sudden their stock is worth $0, and the people that sold you in the stock in the first place, the creators of Stockmark, walk away as millionaires, and you are what we call in the stock industry a bag holder, because you're holding a bag full of stock that, you know what I mean, is worth nothing, right?
Yeah.
And that's my issue. That's my issue with these niche IPOs.
Well, the thing that I actually might be concerned with like a Poshmark or something like that is that if a sexier model comes along, and because they don't have control over their inventory, right? That's people like me who are out like buying too much stuff, and then we're like, okay, I was holding this in the closet in hopes that I could fit into it, but it still has the tags on it. I'll sell it, right?
Right.
But if somebody else comes along, or if some trends change, they're not going to be able to serve that market in the same way. So like, I really look at that and I say, okay, what do they have? They just have like an e-commerce model. This is how they sell, but they don't really have a lot of control over the business because it's people like me. It's just a marketplace,
Right.
Yeah, they're relying on a market. They're relying on the marketplace to continue to provide them with goods.
Right.
And like, I don't know if I'm 100% correct, but I know StockX is actually sponsored, or they do something along the lines of various sneaker conventions. And I do think that companies like Poshmark, they could, bounce into a kind of pop-up shop type experience where that it could speed along the process a little bit of bringing new goods in and that kind of.
Well, this is the downside of extreme niche, right? There's niche, and then there's extreme niche. Is both of what you said is correct, but then you add on top of that we're high-end sneakers, right? High-end clothing and stuff like that. Look, these are both products that when the economy tanks, when people aren't working, when disposable income goes down a rabbit hole, they disappear. Nobody's buying $1,000 sneakers if you can't feed yourself, right? Nobody's buying $2,000 dresses when you can't feed yourself. These are all high. Look, I went to the doctor yesterday for my annual physical, talking to my doctor, and we were talking about last year and how his practice was doing, right? And he said, look, June or July last year, he's like, before Dos Equis came along, I was looking at hiring another doctor, growing the business, whatever, and then Dos Equis comes along, June or July, he's like, I almost had to let go of some of my employees because nobody was walking into the office, right? And that's medical that everybody needs. Now you add that onto something like this, and again, we did a podcast about a Wayne Gretzky card that sold for millions of dollars. Any of this memorabilia stuff, comic books, I put this kind of stuff in that same kind of category because it's not a need. It's a really, really nice thing that if I have disposable income, it makes sense, and you can make the markups are massive, right? It doesn't cost any more for Louis Vuitton to make that purse than it does another purse maker to make a.
That's not true.
Not completely true. I'm exaggerating.
So you're paying a premium that's well beyond what the difference in the cost of the goods are.
Yeah.
The markup is much bigger, right?
Yeah. So speak for yourself. Speak for yourself. In the middle of 2020's pandy, I went out there and I bought. There was 4 pieces in my watch collection that was missing, and not missing, I just wanted them. And so after getting let go, like, whatever, like, my job stopped existing, I went out there and bought them because, you know, I was like, well, if we're all going down, I'm gonna finally buy this thing that I wanted. So,
Which is why
My
we don't
wrist is
listen
gonna
to.
look good.
That's right. That's why we don't listen to any investment tips from Danny over here, right?
untrue. My
It's,
portfolio has been
that-
doing fantastic over the last year.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Yes. Yes.
for you
yes.
and up yours as well.
That's the way it is. Yeah, yeah. So, Miss Terry, is there anything else that now that you've witnessed all what is our insanity and that kind of stuff, are there any questions that we haven't answered? If is there anything of your your products that you would like to talk about? Any of that kind of stuff?
Where
before we
can
get done
people
with this?
find you on the internet?
Yeah.
The interwebs.
So people can find me on the interwebs at terrybmcdougall.com. That's my website. And they can get in touch with me through that. I'm also on LinkedIn, and my handle is Terry B. McDougall. My book, Winning the Game of Work, is available on Amazon, worldwide, on Barnes & Noble, Hobo. And then my new podcast is called Marketing Mambo, and it's got its own website, marketingmambo.net, and all of the different platforms are there that you can subscribe to it on.
Awesome.
Danny will put all those links in the in the video. He'll put all the stuff down below.
Of course I will.
Awesome.
I do
you.
my job, unlike other people on this podcast who aren't named Terry.
So sad. So sad. So sad.
Well,
You're
thank
an
you so
embarrassment.
much for doing this. I hope you look back on this and don't regret the choices that you've made.
Hey, you guys, I really liked it. It was
Awesome.
fun. I liked mixing it up with you guys.
Awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
very fun.
Cool.
Well, we appreciate you. We really do. And we will put all those links in down below and that kind of stuff. And if we can ever do anything for you at all, not that Danny could, but I would be happy to, do anything that I could for you. So, definitely contact me, not Danny, if you need anything done. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Thank you so much, you guys.
So
It was
for
really
Idiots versus Idiots, this is Danny signing off, reminding you that with enough velocity, any restaurant can be a drive-through.
Oh, God. You are such an idiot.
Yeah, I know.
fun. Hi, guys.
Idiots versus Idiots is brought to you by Rise Lentless. Rise Lentless is my merch for Hustler's brand. If you're out there on the grind, working in your home office, you're going to want one of these mugs. Now, if you go to riselentless.com and buy one of these mugs, you're going to be directly supporting me, not Big Man, because, screw Big Man.